Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Taking a look at today's Wednesday 11-game slate, looking for some offensive targets, looking to find those high Vegas totals to look at, some lefty-righty splits. Talking everything offense here. If you're looking for pitching breakdown, I'll reference a little bit throughout each game, but also we have our pitcher pod. So if you're looking for arms on tonight's slate, which isn't too appealing for pitchers, you can go and take a look at what we have to say there. But jumping right into things, we're looking at really what should be a pretty high-scoring night as far as bats go if they all deliver. There are a lot of teams in good spots. And really starting with one of the favorites here is Blue Jays and Orioles sitting with an over/under of 9. You got R.A. Dickey on the hill versus Ubaldo Jimenez. Interesting kind of duo here. If you look at Ubaldo Jimenez, a lot of 327 WOBA to right-handers last season. Did keep the ball in the park, 0.66 home runs per 9, because he did have a solid ground ball rate against him, nearly 60%. On the other hand, if you look at lefties, they had a little more pop, 1.25 home runs per 9, 318 WOBA. You can like a Michael Saunders starting off there, leading off a cheap bat to target, but always Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, Tulowitzki. All great GPP options for me tonight. I won't be leaning towards them in cash just due to the high price tags. But if one of them do find their way in, it's likely because you're paying down at pitching, which I kind of am advising to do tonight anyway. So overall, you're looking at Toronto being a solid team. On the opposite side, looking at the Orioles team, I think this is where I really want to lean in cash games. Obviously, R.A. Dickey on the hill. Right-handers, they had solid success against him over the last few seasons. Struggles a bit more on the road. Manny Machado is a guy I'm looking to get into my lineups tonight. Obviously, that shortstop eligibility is nice on DraftKings, but overall, Machado is one of my favorite plays on the board. 400 WOBA dating back to last season against right-handed pitching. The guy's just been absolutely elite. He's off to a serious start here to 2016. And just dominating right-handed pitching. So in Camden Yards, I don't think there's any way to go around it. Also, you can look at Chris Davis, Mark Trumbo, and GPPs. Joey Ricardo is a cheap option up top. Adam Jones as well. But Machado, kind of that safe cash game play for me. And GPP-wise, he's a guy who's going to be fitting into my lineups quite a bit. So you can look there. Matt Wieters is behind the plate, cheap catcher with some pop. I don't mind him. He's a decent look tonight. Next one here, you got Oakland and the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, so it's going to be favorable for those left-handed bats, which you're looking at the A's, and they have quite a bit of them. The Vegas total isn't high there, but I do think they are a sneaky GPP team. Maybe work some one-offs in, because if you look at Nathan Eovaldi, the guy's really struggled against lefties. He does keep the ball in the park, but it's tough to do in Yankee Stadium. Has a lot of 349 WOBA to left-handers with a 31% hard ball rate. Obviously, Yankee Stadium, a big park factor advantage to those left-handers, and those guys are going to need it. But you're looking at Billy Burns, Chris Coghlan, Josh Reddick, Stephen Vogt, Jed Lowry, all bats that can go yard at that cheap porch there. Coghlan, interesting play, just being 3,200 there on DraftKings, fairly cheap on FanDuel as well. If you're leaning towards him, Reddick is kind of the one that I look for most power from, and Vogue behind the dish as well. Those are the two guys that a bit higher ISO numbers, a little bit more, more of a chance for going yards. So you can definitely look there. On the other side, Kendall Graveman pitching for the A's. Not a great right-hander. Has struggled on the road at times. I'll be looking to target some Yankees bats. You got Ellsbury, Gardner leading off top. McCann, kind of one of my favorite catchers of the day, just due to being in Yankee Stadium. These guys have big splits at home. We saw that with McCann last year. We've seen that with Gardner as well. You look at Gardner, last year had a 364 WOBA at home with a 183 ISO. On the road, 291 WOBA with a 099 ISO. McCann kind of in a similar boat as far as, hitting dongs at a Yankee Stadium, which, they love to do. So overall, both of them are pretty decent price tag. You can look at Teixeira and GPPs. I think he's a solid option. Outside of that, it's really the top of the lineup for me. I don't see a need to go to Carlos Beltran, Chase Headley, guys like those. You can really stick with the 1 through 5 hitters there. Next game, we got the Mets and the Phillies. Mets with a big run total here. And since Michael Conforto's come into that lineup, they've actually looked really solid and started to hit the ball a little bit well. Cespedes, Duda, Walker all behind him hitting well. Even Wright. And obviously a matchup against Hellickson is going to be pretty favorable. And Vegas is expecting it too. So really looking at the Mets in cash and GPPs. Left-handers dating back to last year, 321 Woboff, Hellickson, so not too bad. He's shown a little bit more reverse splits, 337 Woboff to right-handers with a 1.55 home run per 9. But either way, I'm looking at these bats, and Michael Conforto really stands out to me. 25% line drive rate off right-handed pitching. He's just doing the damage, and so far in 2016, 2 homers, 5 doubles, over 40 plate appearances. I love the price, 2,800 on FanDuel, 34 on DraftKings. Very cheap for a guy who's hitting third in the order with a 4.5 run total. So we're looking at Conforto. You can target Neil Walker, Duda and GPP, Cespedes, safe option, David Wright, another one. Hellickson getting beat by lefties and righties, so really looking that way. For the Mets bats tonight. Next one you got here, Nationals and Marlins. This one isn't too intriguing as far as offense goes. I think you got two more than capable arms of shutting each other down. Obviously, Harper on DraftKings is still in play, with him just being super locked in at 5,000. FanDuel, he's expensive. He's priced like he's playing NBA right now. So really, I think you can kind of fade him and hope to hit on those cheaper bats. But I can't argue against it because he is just going absolutely off. Much like last night, I mean, Conley looked very solid throughout the beginning. He's got a little bit higher strikeout rate than Chen does. Chen is a little bit home run prone at times, so you can take a look at Zimmerman, Worth, Ramos, Rendon, and GPPs. I won't be leaning on them in cash. I expect this one to be fairly low scoring for the most part. So I'm not expecting a ton of offense. And obviously, Miami's not the greatest park to really launch homers, really, unless you're Bryce Harper. But I mean, that guy can hit homers pretty much anywhere. As far as the Marlins side of things go, Joe Ross has been pretty solid this year. Over his longer sample size, he struggled with left-handed bats. The Marlins are rolling out 5 lefties in the first 7 hitters there. So that is interesting. D. Gordon, you can look at as far as GPPs go, does have stolen base upside. Yelik's been hitting well, still fairly cheap. He would be in play for me. And obviously Stanton and GPPs is still an obvious play, but I think there are better options and better games to target tonight. Next one, you got Los Angeles and the Braves. We had Julio Teheran scratch yesterday. He is pitching today. Looking at the Dodgers, they completely let us down yesterday against Williams Perez, who's even worse against lefties. But if you're looking today, I mean, Teheran's been completely awful against left-handers in his career, allowing a 351 WOBA to lefties with a 1.45 home runs per 9. You're looking at these Dodgers bats as being pretty premium again, and they're pretty cheap as well. One guy I like is Corey Seager. He's a solid play. Absolutely crushes right-handed pitching. Not a big strikeout guy for such a young player, which is nice to see. Vegas has 4.5 down for team run total, so that's nice if you're looking at value or Vegas as far as making your decisions. But really, Seager. If you are paying up for pitching, I think you'll find a ton of Dodgers bats in your lineup just because they're so cheap and they're in such a good spot. Utley leading off, Gonzalez hitting 4th. Yasmani Grandal is a cheap GPP catcher. So really, I mean, they stand out as top options again. As far as the Atlanta side, I'm actually looking at Ross Stripling as a cash game arm tonight. So not really staying, with any of these Atlanta bats in my cash or GPPs tonight. Once again, there's far better options. Next one here, you got Rays and the Red Sox. Pretty low-scoring game targeted here. One, because the Rays' offense isn't too friendly. Red Sox facing Chris Archer, who has been struggling. You can take a look at some of these guys. You can look at Ortiz and GPPs. They do have a lower price tag on DraftKings because they are facing Archer today. So if you want to hope the Archer struggles continue, you can look at Boston. But overall, I think this game is pretty unappealing. Porcello bounced back last game, but still definitely a threat to have a blow-up. You can really look at guys like Longoria, Forzier, Logan Morrison, and Dickerson all hitting 1 through 4 there against Porcello, who struggled with lefties and righties with his time in Boston. So those would be the only guys you could really look at. They're only kind of there for value anyway. Tigers Royals. This one kind of an interesting matchup because you got two guys who have been really pitching well to start the year, but you also have two offenses more than capable of putting up tons of runs. I don't see a ton of production from either side here. Obviously, Ian Kennedy is home run prone at times. Um, you're looking at really 1 through 6 there, and even Saul Tulamaki with the way he's producing of late, who can produce a ton of homers. But Kauffman Stadium, not a great home run park. I'm kind of expecting this game to just be kind of a wash. Hitters don't do enough for me. Pitchers don't do enough for me. I'm kind of just scratching this one off the board tonight. Next one here, you got Houston and Texas. This one's pretty favorable on both sides. Houston more so for GPPs. Texas, you can lean both formats. Doug Fister, guy who struggled against right-handed bats last year, but wasn't too bad against lefties as well. He did allow 1.31 home runs per 9 to left-handed bats, and that's really what Texas brings to the table tonight. You're looking at Nomar Mazara, Prince Fielder, Mitch Moreland, Rougned Odor, all lefties that can definitely get to Fister. And Adrian Beltre, Dylan DeShields, kind of two interesting right-handers if you want to attack those reverse splits that Fister had last year. Mazara, an interesting play here tonight, another value guy I like. He has yet to strike out against a right-handed pitcher so far this season. And he's absolutely he gets on base. He's a nice cash game play, super cheap still. 519 OBP against right-handers to start his career. So in a high-scoring game, I'm looking Mazara to hit in that 2-hole again and to be a solid production. If you need to go that cheap, once again, you're just considering paying down at pitching tonight, so maybe you won't have to steep that low. But if you do, he's definitely in play for me. A lot of these guys, I'm kind of like Fielder, leaning more towards GPPs, Moreland as well. Odor, a safe play. I don't love his lineup spot hitting 7th, but he's still worth a look. As far as the Houston side, with Hamels on the hill, it's obviously tough to target against them. I highly recommend not doing it in cash games. GPPs, you can look at Altuve, Springer, Correa, Tyler White, Evan Gattis, all because they match left-handed pitching. If Hamels can get, leaves a couple balls up, the balls are going to fly out of Global Life here tonight. So you could look at them. It would be an interesting stack because it would be pretty contrarian, even though it is a lefty. But overall, I just think Hamels isn't a guy I want to target too much of, but certainly a contrarian move there. Twins Brewers, here's the one that's going to be really high scoring, and I think more so from the Milwaukee side. Minnesota does have potential against Jimmy Nelson because he does struggle with the long ball at times. He also hasn't been missing a ton of bats this year, but the Twins have been missing a ton of balls because their strikeout rate is just absolutely horrendous. Nelson's main struggles really come from the right side, or from the left side, sorry. Joe Mauer is the only one that would really jump out at me as giving him any trouble, and he's not a guy with tremendous upside anyway. But I'm really looking more so on the Milwaukee side. All those bats up top that I think are really interesting stacked tonight in Miller Park. It enhances runs and homers from the right side and left side. Domingo Santana, Jonathan Villar, both two value options from this game. Ryan Braun, Luke Roy, both playable in all formats for me, both hit lefties well. Luke Roy kind of stumbled off against Southpaws over the last 2 seasons, but overall he has a career WOBA over 350 against lefties. So Chris Carter, Aaron Hill, both GPP plays as well. I think Milwaukee's a pretty interesting team to build around, and Vegas is expecting a ton of runs there. In that park, why not? Later games here, you got Pirates and Padres. I'm expecting a ton of offense here. 2 lefties on the hill make it interesting. The only thing that's kind of going up against, these bats, it is in Petco. But you look at a guy like McCutchen, David Freese, Starling Marte, Francisco Cervelli, Josh Harrison, all have hit southpaws pretty well. Drew Pomeranz, your average to maybe slightly above average southpaw. I don't mind those guys, more so if you're just leaning towards playing that late Satan's 2 games. Maybe you're looking to be different. Maybe you want to, put in Starling Marte, who has some tremendous upside, can hit a gap and run for days. Same with McCutchen. I don't mind Marte's price, just 4,300 on DK. It's pretty solid for me. If you're looking to be a bit contrarian, I don't mind the move there. As far as the San Diego side, same thing again, but even less so, just because you're looking at Matt Kemp, Derek Norris, 2 guys who hit lefties pretty well in their career. But Vegas isn't expecting a ton of runs. I think you got to be pretty selective. If you're building multiple lineups, maybe you work a few of these guys in, but overall, it's a pretty game to stay away from. Next one here, you got Giants and Diamondbacks. I'm not expecting much offense out of this one. Zach Greinke, Madison Bumgarner is the lowest total on the night here. No guys I really recommend taking from this game. I think you can pretty much fade altogether as far as offense goes. I know it might be enticing to take Goldschmidt against a lefty. It is Madison Bumgarner. He has been a little banged up here to start their season, but overall, these are offenses that I expect to produce very little against these two arms tonight, even though they have struggled to begin the year. So that's going to wrap it up with the slate breakdown. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.